onto?
The quote that we chose to respond to for our conceptual framework is, get a few teachers in a room and it's easy to talk the talk with regard to beliefs and philosophy, but the real test of our beliefs is when we walk the walk in our classrooms. It's one thing to say what we believe, but it's quite another to do what we believe, especially when mandates from far away ask us to compromise or change the way we do our jobs. Regardless of the curriculum, whether it's a new math program or a mandated approach to reading, there are fundamental ways of being in our classroom that enable us to follow our beliefs as professionals and to follow our hearts as teachers of children.
Now, my first question for you, what is important to you as a teacher of literacy, and how does this relate to the quote?
So the quote, I'm going to just take the lead here.
Yeah, you go first, and I'll go second.
All right. So the quote talks a lot about teachers actually demonstrating the beliefs in the classroom that they have, even if the school puts restrictions on them. So, for example, something that's really important for me to have in my classroom is to have worldly issues and like truth introduced through the context of the literature. So I don't necessarily want books to be like sugar-coated for the kids. I think that kids have the fair right to access books that talk about historical elements and historical truths such as slavery or like the civil rights.
Keep nothing hidden from them.
Keep nothing hidden from them. They have the right to know about climate change and global warming. They have a right to know about, gender roles or like sexist and racist experiences and theories that are in the world. They deserve to be educated on those so they can
not get a single story.
Yes, and like help change that and help like prevent those things in the future. Right?
I like that.
What about you?
Well, my philosophy, I suppose, is keeping a culturally responsive classroom. Thank you, Math Methods. Because I want a classroom where my students see themselves in their work. They see themselves in the room and they're not feeling isolated from the content. They're not feeling isolated from their peers. And I think doing that, bringing them within the content, bringing them into the classroom, and making them have ownership of everything in there is how you make them stronger in language, stronger in content, and more confident speaking.
And in an authentic way, like we shouldn't be pointing out, books that express like, oh, this book is about, a young Hispanic girl and her raising. Like that should just authentically be in our class libraries. They should be in our real lives. They should be totally implemented into our curriculum. So it doesn't need to be looked at as different.
Exactly. It needs to be something innate about your classroom. It can't be something you force in halfway through the year. It has to be something you're building with classroom community too.
I love it.
Thank you. Thank you for those answers.
You're welcome.
Design a lesson that would showcase the philosophy as described in the quote. And at the same time, you might as well design a classroom that showcases the same thing.
So as for the classroom, we just talked about having like an authentic, culturally responsive library, so making sure that students have access to a range of different kinds of literature, different letters, and I think it's always nice when teachers take an event that's happening and have, like unit books displayed on the chalkboard rail, or have like suggestions like if you're looking for, books similar to this, you can look here. As for a lesson that like showcases the philosophy, as for like teaching about like global issues and like the truths around the world, I think designing a lesson around that is just as simple as like finding the right book to connect it to.
Yeah, I really like that. I like the bringing in the real world into the classroom. I think a whole lesson I could do with maybe math. I could have my students pick their favorite soccer player or their favorite soccer team, and they could plot out graphs of like scores in a goal or scores in a game, and then maybe like analyze their progression through the season. Just I think bringing that world around them into their world of academics, I think that's what makes them interested in the lessons, especially with my Latino community. They do a whole graph about Cristiano Ronaldo. They're going to be psyched about doing that. That would not be a chore for them. That would not be hard for them to do. That would be something that they're quickly going to finish and they can't wait to share with us.
Something that they can identify with, which is,
I think that'd be a cool lesson.
I do too.
You crushed it. Thank you. What resources, material, and professional development support would you need in order to teach, as described in this quote?
I think you just need your philosophy. You need like an understanding of yourself and what you believe, and I think that that's what these method courses are like making us reflect on, is what is important when we're standing in front of that class, and how can we tie that into the curriculum, and how can we tie that into lessons. Lost my train of thought.
It's okay. Tie in our philosophy to the lessons.
As for support, I mean, you've taken ELL classes, I've taken ELL classes. We learned a lot about how to like scaffold text and provide visuals, and to provide graphic organizers that could support the development of different students at different levels of understanding and comprehension.
Sweet.
Yeah, I think what I would like a PD about is how to differentiate for my higher level ELLs, because I think my focus is often on those lower level ELLs, supporting their language, supporting like them being able to converse between English and Spanish. And I think sometimes I struggle with the kids who are very, very masterful in Spanish, and they're just, getting comfortable in English, because I don't, sometimes I struggle with how do I challenge them.
And like looking at like the students that are getting the work correct instead of putting them on the back burner, like, oh, they don't need your help.
Yeah.
How do you
touch on them
continue
later,
to differentiate so they are also challenged and then evaluated and assessed on what they're learning and what you're teaching them, not necessarily what they knew.
So I think having maybe project-based activities that they could do would be pretty awesome, and that in itself, I would need some awesome support from my principal or my team.
Anything that you can get like your school on board with
would be awesome.
would be awesome.
Finding the right school is important.
Okay, next question. I think you've kind of answered this before, but maybe you want to reiterate some points. What would your classroom look like to match the philosophy from your quote? Welcome back. As teachers, we need to be flexible in changing our lessons, and, well, we had to change our position here. So, the question that we were trying to ask, what would your classroom look like to match the philosophy from your quote?
So another aspect of teaching, another philosophy that's really important to me, is also integrating art into my classroom. And I want students to be able to, through every lesson, be able to self-express and to be able to have hands-on some way for them to put what the information that they're taking in and put it out into the world in a way that is totally up to them. So whether that's visually with pictures or paintings, or whether that's photography, or whether that's podcasting or videotaping, or whether that's coloring anything, I want them to be able to self-express the way that they're taking in that information in their own way, and then I want my classroom to reflect the way that they are choosing to express that information.
I absolutely love that. I think I'm not as artsy-fartsy as you are, but I love that you embody all of that, your philosophy within art, because I think that's some way that the kids can have their self-expression without being like, oh, here's a paper, write this quick. More like, hey, show me what you're thinking about. Show me your ideas. Put yourself on this paper, and then let's have it on the wall so that everyone, can see what you're trying to express.
And to see that everyone's is different, and it's not about who's the best, who's the worst, what you can do and what you can't do. What it's about is like, that's how you made it meaningful to you. Mm-hmm. So that's what's going to be meaningful to the classroom.
Great. Last, before we're done with our interview, one of the critique quotes, if you can choose one and then respond, bring in your practical experiences if applicable. I'll start with that. Think about the following. What might the constraints be that would prevent you from teaching the way you want? How would you work around this?
how will we work around the constraints that keep us from being the teachers we want to be?
Yep, and in the same time responding to the critique quote.
Okay, so the critique quote was, we frequently see instruction that is focused on moving young children to the next text levels as fast as possible, and whether children enjoy reading or fall in love with books or develop habits that will benefit them throughout their lives become an afterthought, not a priority. Well, we kind of talked about that today, how we're seeing so much of system testing, and I think having to battle with that within your classroom is difficult, but I think then implementing project-based activities, art, ways to keep lessons fresh and authentic is what's important.
Music, yeah, ways to involve the students instead of just giving the students.
Yeah, and make them have ownership of the lessons, ownership of the classroom, because I think when they're just being dredged down with all these tests like, oh, do this, do this, do this, they feel kind of lost. I don't think they see themselves in that work, and I think to them it feels like this is just something I need to do and I need to get through it. While asking them to do like a fun project or really cool art, that's the way that they can be like, you know what, I'm liking this and I'm feeling like this is a part of me, part of my school.
And it's also so important to, when bringing literature into the curriculum, to make it enjoyable for the students. How many students do you hear even in this, small school like Edgewood that don't enjoy reading? And that's because the teacher was not giving them something to love. The teacher was not giving them something exciting. The teacher was not giving them enough to the point where they felt connected and encouraged and excited to continue reading and developing those abilities.
Yeah, we need to ignite that flame of I love to read.
Reading is good.
Reading is
this
good.
This is what we do as
benefits
readers.
me.
Yes. And then connecting that to our practicum, right, Rach?
Yep.
So unfortunately, the literacy I'm seeing in my practicum isn't all that spectacular right now. I don't think that they're necessarily even, I don't hear any, I see DLR, I see daily language review every day. That's what I see, and then I see a read aloud. And then occasionally the kids have their independent book, but they never really get to reflect on that. The one time I saw a book club, they didn't even know how to have a book club. Like the teachers didn't even give them the framework of how a book club, how people in book clubs talk, how they ask questions, how they answer questions, how they think about the book. And a lot of the kids weren't even at the same point in the book, so it made it really difficult. It just seemed really disorganized in my classroom.
I think that'd be pretty jarring if you were way behind and then everyone else is talking about something you're not even at. Like, how discouraging is that?
Exactly. Like someone's talking about something that happened in chapter 9 and you're like,
not even there yet.
I'm at chapter 2, I had soccer practice last night, I couldn't read,
Well, I'm actually really blessed. I've had the first great literacy practicum I've ever had. And what I like about mine is that they get to choose the groups they work with. They have their book box they can choose for when it's independent reading. But she allows them to choose their genre and choose the book they want to read. And they're all expected to do the same work, like study the theme, study character growth, study conflict, but then they're choosing the book they're working with. They're choosing the genre they're working with. And I think them being able to choose what they want to do is making a huge difference compared to when I've seen, oh, here's the book you're reading and here's what you have to do. Without any word or say of, well, that doesn't interest me, can I do something I like? So it just sounds very different from what you're experiencing and what I have experienced in the past.
Is this at Leopold?
This is at Horizon.
Horizon. So Horizon, you don't say any Spanish. How does your curriculum look for
When I'm
reading when you're at Leopold?
Yeah, that's a little different.
It's in Spanish, right?
Yes.
So they're reading in Spanish, but do you have any discussion that takes place then afterward in English? Are they integrating English into
So it depends on the quarter. So for example, this quarter right now, they're reading in English. So small groups and their different level books will all be in English. Discussion happens in English, worksheets are in English, everything to do with reading is English.
Okay.
When it's in Spanish, the books are in Spanish, discussions are in Spanish, and worksheets are all in Spanish.
Okay, I like that.
Me too. Consistency is key, especially with language.
So what, for you, Seth, what might be constraints that would prevent you from teaching the way you want? So I know that you have a lot of things in your way, but when it comes to teaching sometimes the way you want. You can't necessarily incorporate your language into a lot of things.
Yeah, I think the constraints I will have as a DLA teacher is not having enough support. Like, as I've mentioned in my mom's classroom, her library is books she's bought and books from second grade. Like, it's very hard to find books that are in Spanish and books that have that DLI set of mind that's, supporting language growth of their native tongue, but at the same time setting them up to be able to translate that into English. And I think that's what I'm going to struggle with the most. I think I'm going to have to really go out of my way to make worksheets, translate books. Like, that's going to be a struggle for me. And I think also differentiating from my high-level English speakers who are doing great in Spanish versus my low-level Spanish speakers who are not doing great in English.
A lot of work.
It's going to be a lot of work, but I'll just have to be super focused because
I think the position you're taking is the most important position that education can take right now, though, because we don't have enough teachers that can teach Spanish in schools in a way where you're not losing your native language, you're just gaining bilingualism, you're just gaining the ability to speak another language. And I mean, you look at the demographics of the Madison School District now, and majority is Hispanic.
yeah.
Where like English isn't even like the majority of students in some school anymore. So it's how incredible that you get to be one of those people that bridges a barrier, that bridges a gap.
That's why I wish there were more Hispanic
stuff.
students. Hispanic teachers. I think that makes a big difference.
I do too.
From what I've seen. Whether it be the accent in Spanish or being able to tie in culture, like how can you tie in a culture that you're not a part of?
Yeah. I can't do a Hispanic accent. I try.
Or be able to talk about quinceañeras or like making money.
I worked at quinceañera one time.
I feel like you can only really do that.
2 times actually.
2 times. 2 times.
2 times.
Is that it?
That's it. I think.
Okay, thank you.
You crushed it.
This has been the Sassy Jess Show.
Woo!